Hey voters, Anthony the Internet Politician here. Now before I begin, do not forget to like and subscribe to keep up to date on new content. Today we're going to follow up on our previous viewer question and discuss what it would take for Colombia and Puerto Rico to become states. And I don't mean Colombia as in the South American country. I mean Colombia as the district of. So if you were here the last time, you may remember a conversation I had with Donald from Texas. We were talking about basically voting laws, etc. And a topic that kind of came up was what about dividing up Texas? And while I don't think that was specifically in the video, it was a discussion we had later on off the air. And it came to a thought of, well, isn't the fact that Puerto Rico and Colombia are not currently states because of Republican resistance? So let's go through this real quick. So Colombia, of course, is the non-federal district of Washington, D.C. So it's basically the areas outside of the federal area where the White House is and where the Congress is, and not part of Virginia, not part of Maryland. So it's that general area with an enclave in the middle for the federal government part. If I remember correctly, the population of the District of Columbia is larger than Rhode Island. So, and Rhode Island is our smallest state, so that tells you something. So, the reason why Puerto Rico and Colombia are not states, is, despite the fact that they have voted to become states, is because the conservatives, particularly the hardline Republicans, feel that if they were to become states, that the Republicans would never ever get a Republican in presidency again. May or may not be true, but keep in mind that while Colombia is strongly Democratic, Puerto Rico would be a swing state. They vary between Republicans and Democrats, probably a little bit more Democrat than Republican, but there's enough fear there for Republicans to go, maybe not. So then there is generally a solution, and it's been bandied about in both Texas, again, the connection to last time, and California. So the first one I have here on this list is Northern California, which is composed of Southern Oregon and Northern California. The proposed states' names include things like Jefferson. So what would it take for that to happen? Well, California would have to vote on splitting the state, which I think they have, and it's failed. Don't quote me on that. But it was for Northern California to split off. That's where a lot of the wealthier conservatives live. And so once you split off from a state, let's say they did decide to do that, and it actually got to the federal government where the Congress approved the whatever, still they would have to have a state constitution in line. And then once that was done, and let's say the Northern California was now a state, for the Southerners in Oregon to join them, they would also have to go through the same process. The state would have to vote to separate, and then, of course, Northern California and the new Southern Oregon, once it was approved by Congress, would have to vote to join or something along the line. It might be less complicated than that, but cutting up states requires acts of Congress after the state does the vote and has a constitution written. So I'd like to point out, I do not know if Colombia nor Puerto Rico have constitutions written for statehood. No idea. I didn't ask. I didn't look. Okay, so now we have an additional conservative state in Northern California. Next we go to Texas. Now Texas initially was discussed when it became part of the United States, splitting it into 3 sections. It's a large state. It's literally the second largest next to Alaska, but Alaska has almost no people in it. So the proposal is, there used to be a Western Texas, a Texas, and East Texas. This one is just saying basically Dallas-Fort Worth, Northeast cut off, and you have 2 Texas. You have West Texas and East Texas, or one's Texas and one's directional Texas, whatever. And the state would possibly be called Franklin if they didn't decide to keep the Texas name. I think somebody compared it to the Dakotas. So, like, North and South Dakota were once the territory of Dakota, and then it was decided, these are big areas. Let's just make them 2 separate states. Sure. So, again, for each of them to become states, the whole state has to vote in separation. and then the states, the new state, I guess, or maybe even both, have to have a constitution. I guess it depends on where Austin falls, being the capital of that state. A constitution, and then it has to be approved through the Congress. So that is how we end up with 2 additional conservative states, and then that is when it becomes possible for Colombia and Puerto Rico to join the United States. We end up with 54 states. And I think it's the benefit to the conservatives that if they allow Puerto Rico in after the other 2 states, because they know they had that swing state, which will often, or sometimes, you should say, not often, sometimes would end up in their favor. So it looks like an incentive to me. But the chances of California and Texas actually voting and passing that vote to split, fairly unlikely. I mean, anything's possible, but I doubt this is possible. So that is how, those 2 would become states, and hopefully that explains the situation as to why the holdup on Colombia and Puerto Rico becoming states exist. And I hope that it answers the question for you watching, in case you ever pondered it. At any rate, that is all the time I have for today, voters. Remember, a good voter is an informed voter who can think for themselves. Do not forget to check out my previous videos on this channel, as well as like and subscribe to keep up to date on new content. Thanks for watching.